Hey guys, alright, so exciting news. We now have an official pre-release version of RFSuite that includes all of the dashboard stuff that Rob and I have been working on over the past 3 months. It also includes a bunch of performance and other improvements associated with it. We've also had some support of late too from Wagner, who's helped create and worked with us to set up smart voltage, which is another cool feature that we've recently added, which I will cover off later on in this video. So just to play it out, what the intention of this video is, I'm going to create a timestamp video that goes through the setup, configuration, common troubleshooting issues that you might face, and basically how to raise any issues that you're facing, things like that, so that you guys can skip through to the relevant sections, and it basically covers off everything that you would need to get up and running with RFSuite. Now, to start it off with, what we'll do is I'll cover off how to get this pre-release version installed onto your transmitter, and also some of the gotchas that you may face during the installation process of it. So to start off with, what you will need to do is you'll need to go to the RotorFlight Lua Ethos Suite GitHub page. Now, I'll include a link to that in the description of the video. That way it makes it easier for you guys to find this page, because sometimes getting around GitHub can be a bit of a challenge. So once you do land on this page, you'll see on the right there's a +9, well, there's a releases with a +9 releases here. This is the current release version. So to get the pre-release version, what you want to do is click on the +9 releases. Now, it may be different when you're watching this video, depending when you're watching this video, but as of recording, it's currently says +9. Either way, what you want to do, click on that, and then what you will see is you'll see now the pre-release version of RFSuite that's available for download. And then if you just expand out the assets button, there's a couple of zip files here. Now, the top zip file, this is RFSuite, the pre-release version that includes the English audio pack within it. We also do have sound packs for those of you in other countries that wish to have your audio call outs played in an alternative language. So we do have that as a separate download. Now, we did that to reduce the size of the actual installation of RFSuite. So what everyone want to do is download this version, and then if you want the extra sound packs, you can grab those files from the zip file. Now, what I'll do is I'll download this, and then what we'll do is open up the download. So you can see this is the version here. What I'll do is I'll bring up my transmitter so that I can show you guys the process of updating from the current release version of RFSuite to this new pre-release version. So what I'll do is I'll plug my transmitter in, and I'll also bring my transmitter up for you guys so that you can see this. Give me a moment, I'll bring that up now. Okay, so you can see that I've got here my transmitter. It's connected via USB, and then also if I just take it away for the moment, you can see I've also got my radio's storage drives have opened up. So what we want to do is we want to remove the current version, if you do have a current version of RFSuite, off your radio. So under your radio's flash drive, under the scripts directory, we're just going to delete the RFSuite folder. Now, what I currently have on my radio is the current release version of RFSuite, and I also had you wouldn't have seen, but I did have the status widget on my display basically before I've updated this, so I can show you some of the common issues that you may face when following this process. So what we'll do is you need to make sure you delete the current version of RFSuite. This is important. It makes sure that when we put the new version on, that it's clean and that it's got all the latest stuff. You will not lose anything by doing this. It's just very important that whenever you're updating RFSuite, that you ensure that you remove the old version first and don't just copy the latest version over the top, because there'll basically be files and folders and things that we would have removed or changed as part of our update. So firstly, make sure you delete that, and then we'll just go back to our download. So this is the downloaded zip file. Now you can right click and you can extract it if you wish. What I typically do though is I just open up the zip file itself, and then within the scripts folder, you'll see the RFSuite folder. So we just want to copy that folder, copy that, and then go back to our scripts directory on our radio's flash drive and just paste that on there. Now, some of you may have used or do use RFSuite tool to install your Lua scripts. At the moment, it doesn't recognize the RFSuite Lua scripts when you use that tool. It does work in older versions. The latest version doesn't work. There's a bit of an issue there with that latest version. So what you will need to do is follow the process I'm doing now. It's essentially doing the same thing as what the RFSuite tool does. It literally just copies it directly onto your radio storage for you. So there's no issues with following this process I'm doing. So just something to be mindful of. Make sure that you grab it from the zip file and copy it directly into your flash drive, into your scripts directory. Now, if you've got a new radio and you on your flash drive, you actually don't even have a scripts directory, it's totally fine to right click new and create a new folder and call it scripts. Alternatively as well, you can go to the, I'll just bring up the zip file. So within this zip file, if we go back within it, just opening up the zip file, you see it actually already has a script folder there. So you could actually just copy this folder and paste it directly onto your radio's flash storage drive, and it will then create the scripts folder for you. Either way works. If you have the scripts directory though, just simply copy the RFSuite directory and paste the new version in there once you've removed the existing version. Okay, so now that this is pretty much finished copying, what I'll do is I'll bring up my transmitter again. Yep, so it's just about to finish. So I'll bring my transmitter up on the screen so you can see this. Okay, now I will get an error because I didn't remove from my display, I didn't remove the RF status widget, which as a result of me deleting the existing RFSuite version, that now no longer exists. So I will get an error. I'll show you how to fix that if you do get that, or if you do face this problem. So just disconnect that, and you'll see at the top here, sorry, it's a bit blurry. You'll see there's an exclamation mark. I'll try and make that a bit clearer, but it's not really focusing too well. But anyway, so there's the exclamation mark up the top. Now to get rid of that, you just need to click the display button on your radio, and then you need to go to configure, and then you'll see under widget, this was status. So now what we're going to do, and now's the right time. So this is how to add dashboard to your display. So you just pick RotorFlight dashboard, and then we'll just return back. And you also just need to make sure that under your layout, if we just go change layout, now I'll cover this off in more detail after this, but you need to pick, and you can't really see it on the screen, this is why I'll do it in the sim, but you do need to pick this one here as your layout, just because the RFSuite dashboard requires either full screen or basically a windowed screen that's full as your layout. And then we'll just quit out of that. And then now to clear the error up the top that we've got there, you just go to System, scroll across to Info, open that up, and you'll see there's the Lua widget key. That's because it, as I said, it's trying to load a widget that doesn't exist on your transmitter storage anymore. So I'll just click Reset to clear that, and now that error will no longer appear. And then if we click back out, you can see there we go. So we've got the dashboard stuff. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to switch now over to the simulator to walk through setting up some of the features and functionality that are now in the latest version of Suite, just because it gives you a better view of what's going on, and it's just far easier for me to then show things, because trying to actually display your transmitter screen through a video is not the best quality. So what I'll do now is I'll cut over to the sim, which is exactly like doing it on the radio, and I'll walk through everything, and then we'll go from there. Thanks. All right, so I've got the simulator loaded now. I figured I'd just quickly take the time just to explain the fact that there is a BG task, or a background task, that's required in order for RFSuite to function. So if you do see this message on the screen, all you need to do is click on Model, scroll across to Lua. and just turn on the background task. So that's required in order for things to work. Now at the moment I've simulated this as not having a model connected, so I can show you guys what settings you can do before you even connect up a model, and then I'll walk through some of the settings you can also set when you have a model connected. So in order to get access to what we call the RFSuite admin module, you'll just need to click on System, scroll across, and you'll see the RotorFlight button. So with no model connected, you'll see there's a bunch of fields grayed out. So firstly, under Settings, we have a bunch of options here. So I'll just walk through things. So we have the general options. For those of you with different transmitter sizes, you can actually choose the icon styles that you would like within the admin module. Majority will probably just leave that on large because it does typically look the best on most screens. There is also the option to sync your model name. So what that will do is it will take your craft name that you've configured in RotorFlight and then name the model that you have saved on your radio the same, so that you can basically match those up. So you can turn that on or off. We also do have some transmitter battery options and how you want that to be displayed. I'll walk through those later on when I show you the full screen layout and how we can change some of the standard settings that are there when you've got a full screen layout. So they're your general settings, and then this is where under the dashboard button you would pick your theme. So we have a bunch of themes installed by default. You can basically mix and match them as you wish. So there's an RF status which actually looks and is set up the same way as the old status widget in the previous version of RFSuite. So if you like that layout, we've got that here as a theme in dashboards. But myself and Rob have actually also created I guess some more advanced themes that have a bunch of different graphical representations of some of your telemetry sensor information and whatnot. So for this demo, I'll just use my theme, but you can actually run basically different themes for each of the different flight modes you have. So pre-flight is the screen you see when you connect your heli before you take off. And then what will happen is the display will change and it'll flip to in-flight, and then once you motor off, it'll then go to post-flight, which will give you some summary information about various telemetry sensors and how long your flight was and so on and so forth. So you can mix and match these. So if you like my theme for pre-flight but Rob's for in-flight, you can certainly mix and match. For the demo, I'm just going to pick my theme for everything. So yeah, so you basically got that. And then there's also an optional theme for this model area. Now this is grayed out because I actually don't have a model connected at the moment. But just to talk about this, so what this does for those of you who have a single model on your radio, and you may have on that single model, you may fly a nitro heli and an electric heli, or you may also fly multiple electric helis, but some of them don't have certain telemetry sensors. So it's got an older ESC, or it's like an M2 or a Frsky S1 or something like that that doesn't have consumption-based sensors and things like that. What that means is you can actually pick a specific theme for a specific model whilst running one single model on your radio. I know that's a lot of models, but essentially what it does mean is that you can customize things. If you want to run a single model on your radio with multiple models, you can actually run different themes on different models as well. So we do have the option there for that. It is grayed out. It will show when you have a model connected, but like I said, at the moment, I'm showing you the stuff when you don't have a model connected. So that's where you would pick your theme. I'll show you some of the themes towards the end of this, but this is where you would go to pick your theme and how you want things to look. Again, whilst I'm connected, there's no settings to configure because we don't have a model connected. Then you've got localization. So this is where you would set your temperature against, you can pick either Celsius or Fahrenheit, depending on what unit you would like your temperature to be displayed in. Important to note is that you do not need to change anything on your telemetry sensors. So if you go into your model on your radio and under telemetry, if we go to ESC temperature as an example, once I find it, I've probably gone past it, must have gone past it, it's here somewhere. There it is. You don't want to change your unit of this, you want to just leave it as default. In the sim, it actually doesn't even have a unit specified, which is fine. But all I would say is you don't need to touch anything on this. Leave it as all defaults, because we actually do the calculations to convert, because Celsius is the default for RotorFlight, to convert that to Fahrenheit. So if you have gone and changed your temperature or your altitude sensors to be anything other than Celsius or meters, make sure you just change them back to Celsius and meters, so that way when you're looking at your temperature values and your altitude values in the new dashboard themes, that it will show the correct amount of temperature or the correct height, because otherwise if you had it changed, it'll actually double convert and it'll make the numbers not look correct. So just wanted to make sure I covered that. So that's your localization. I leave it default, which is, for me, that's the units I use. Then we've got the audio section. So what we have under here is we have audio events. So this is where you can configure what RFSuite will call out as an audio alert. So for arming flags, for example, it will call out mode armed or disarmed. Also governor state, it will call out as it transitions through your different governor states. I'm just going to turn that off for this demo. Voltage, again, this will call out your voltage values if you're using voltage for fuel. Typically speaking, though, I think majority of you would probably be using smart fuel. So I would suggest turning that off unless you are flying to voltage. Again, same sort of story with PIDs and rates. You can have it call out your rates values and your PID value that you've got selected via your switch on your radio. So I'm just going to turn those off as well for the demo. ESC temperature. So with this one, it's off by default. If you want to have your transmitter notify you if your ESC exceeds a certain threshold, you would come in here, you can turn that on and you can set your value. So if you're running a localization in Fahrenheit, you'd want to make sure you configure this value appropriate for Fahrenheit. If you're running Celsius, configure the value as if you're using Celsius for your unit type for temperature. So for this example, I'm using Celsius, so I'd configure a Celsius value. I've got mine set at 90. That's I guess a pretty good default to have. Most ESCs can operate hotter than that, but what this means is that if your ESC exceeds this value, so if you're running Fahrenheit, it'll be whatever value you have, but if your ESC temp is higher than this, it will actually notify you and it'll tell you that there's an ESC temperature warning. So it's just a bit of extra, I guess, protection against maybe a potential issue with the ESC being too hot. It's probably a good indication that you may want to land and have a look and see what's going on. Maybe there's an issue with the fan on your ESC, or it's just a really hot day and it probably needs a bit of a break. But yeah, so there's some alerting we have built in for that. And then when it comes to fuel, so we have multiple options for this. So with your fuel, what will happen is by default, when this is on, your fuel values will, at 10%, it will call out that you've got low fuel. And then at 0%, it will call out that you've got low fuel again, just to notify you that your battery's out and you should land. You can choose then to have the low fuel repeat a certain amount of times. So if you're one to fly to 0% but don't necessarily land straight away, or maybe you want to configure it so just in case you don't hear the audio alert, it plays a few times, you can actually change it so that it will play multiple times. They will be spaced 10 seconds apart. So if you were to set this to 3, for example, it would play low fuel 3 times, but 10 seconds apart. So you can configure that, and you can also turn on haptic for it as well. So your transmitter will vibrate when your fuel value's at 0% as well. So we also do have a bunch of other options for when it will call out your fuel percent. So you can have it say, it can count down from 100 down to 0, and it will call it out every 10%, every 20%, 25% or 50%. So again, bunch of different options there. You can have it configured however you like. I personally have it tell me every 10% because it's just a good indication through as I'm flying for how much longer I've got left in my pack before I need to think about landing. So, but you can configure that however you want. So That's the fuel. Well, sorry, not the fuel. That's the audio event system that we've got. Same as previous version. You can also within Suite have it call out certain telemetry sensor values for you and have that assigned to a switch. So from here, you can come in here and you can pick a switch position and you can choose, flick your switch to determine when you flick that switch into that position, it will actually call out this altitude value as an example. I won't worry about doing that, but again, all of the sensors are now here, and you can have it assigned to a switch, or if you've got a gyro in your Frsky transmitter, you can assign it to the gyro. So if you tilt it left, it will call out your altitude. If you tilt it right, it'll tell you your fuel percentage, etc. So you can do that in here. Whilst I am here, I will mention as well, you need to make sure if you do change anything that you click save. If you don't click save, it won't be saved. So for this example, I'm not going to save that. So I'll just go back. And then when I go back in, you'll see it's not actually saved. So you need to make sure you always click save. If you do change anything, simply changing it and then going back will not save it. We've done that just to protect against incorrectly setting something up. So once you have made your changes, always make sure that you click save. Then under timer, so here, this is your timer audio alerting. So I'll cover, once I connect the model up, I'll cover how you set a timer. But for now, this is the audio alerting side of things. So if you want it to tell you once your timer is up, you would just turn this on. And then there's different options you can pick for what will happen once your timer does elapse. So you can have it just as a simple beep. You can have it beep multiple times. It will then tell, or you can have it say that your timer's elapsed, or it will actually call out how long you've flown for. So timer 200 seconds or whatever you set it up as. So there's multiple options there. You can also have it have a pre-alert and post-alert. So for this, what would happen is if you were to turn this on, it will actually start beeping at you for however many seconds prior to your timer running out. So you could set this at 60 or 90 seconds before your timer actually runs out, and you can set the interval. It's kind of like I guess a pre-notification to you that your timer is about to run out. So if you like that, you can do that. And similarly, you can do the same for a post-flight timer alert. So same thing, it will beep for whatever period you set, and for however many however many second interval apart, it will then beep at you to notify you of that. So it just depends. That's just an extra option we've added there if that's something that you want to have. But yes, for the demo, I'll just leave it on I'll just leave it on beep for now. Cool. So that's the audio settings, and then you don't need to worry about the development tab. So that's pretty much everything you can do prior to connecting your model. So now what I'll do is I'll turn on telemetry, this will basically simulate a model connecting. So now you can hear it's calling things out. So now we have a model connected. We have access to all the other menus. Now these are all the same as the existing. I've covered this previously. Rob's also mentioned this in more detail in his video, but these are all your RotorFlight configuration pages where you can adjust your PIDs and you can adjust your governor settings and rates and things like that on your transmitter. What I'm going to cover is some of the newer stuff that we've added. So under hardware, we now have a few new things within here. The first one is stats. So within stats, this is where you can modify your flight count. So there's flight counters now built into RFSuite. So what you can do is you can actually modify your flight count. So say you've got 100 flights on this heli before you've set up this version of RFSuite that you've been tracking some other way. So now you can actually just track it within RFSuite, and it will automatically log a flight and increment this value each time you fly, so you get a good idea for how many flights you've put on a heli, which is handy information for maintenance and other things, bearing, like, when you need to replace your bearings or tail belt or whatever that it might be. So it's pretty handy. So you can change this value if you want, otherwise it will default to start from 0. Total flight time. This is basically what will happen is every time you fly, we will take however many seconds you flew for and add it to total flight time, and that will just keep incrementing. Again, just more information for you for how long you've actually been flying the heli. And if you know that, you can modify it for your heli. I'm just going to leave it at 0 seconds for this demo. But yeah, that's just some extra stuff we've added, and just extra way to know how long you've been flying, how many seconds or minutes or whatever you've been flying your heli for, and also how many flights it's had. Okay, so some of the other new stuff is under the battery section. So this is where we now have what we call smart fuel and smart voltage. So this is where you can now fly safely to 0% fuel, and there will still be whatever you set your consumption warning percentage value at, which I'll cover shortly. Whatever you set that value to is where your fuel will start telling you that it's at 0%. So you don't need to have any logical switches or anything like that set up to fly safely to 0% anymore. You can set whatever value you would like to have have left as fuel in your pack, or capacity left in your pack, and fly down to 0 in RFSuite. And when it says low fuel and you land, there will be that much left in your battery. Now, there is some gotchas around that. Some ESC's telemetry is not accurate, and you may need to play around with things. I can show you how you can get that accurate. But for all intensive purposes, once you set your consumption warning percentage value, you can safely fly to 0% fuel. Now, this information now becomes a whole lot more important for your helis. There are hopefully, and we have discussed this before, there will be battery profiles coming, hopefully to a newer release of RotorFlight in the future, possibly version 2.3. When that does come along, we'll obviously add that functionality into RFSuite to integrate with that. But for now, you would basically need to set up the typical battery capacity that you're running in this particular model that you've got connected. You want to set your max cell voltage. So if you're running a HV LiPo, make sure you set that to 4.35 or 4.3. If you're running a typical standard LiPo, make sure that value is 4.2. Your full cell voltage, now what this value is that if you connect your battery and it is above per cell, if its per cell voltage is above this amount, 4.1 volts per cell, what will happen is it will return your fuel value as 100%. If you connect a pack and the per cell voltage is below this value, it will return a safe calculated value for how much battery capacity you've got left, so that you can still fly to 0% and you'll land around that same consumption warning percentage that you've set up, that I'll talk about soon. So you need to make sure these are all accurate. You don't need to really worry too much about your warning or your min cell voltage values. You can pretty much safely leave those as default. You'll set your cell count, and this is where you'll set your consumption warning percentage. By default, we've actually made it now that it will default to 35%. So by default, this will be 35%. RotorFlight's actually configured and set up the current version to have this as 10%. We've changed things around on our side to actually make that 35%. So when you come in here, you'll actually, if you haven't set that value in RotorFlight, which it's not available in configurator, it's something you have to configure via the CLI, it will default to 35%. So we use 35%. We figured that's a safe value for everyone to use. You can then tweak this to be whatever you would like it to be. So as I said, you'd configure this value. So if you want to fly to having 30% capacity left in your pack, then you'd set this to 30. If you want to fly lower to say 20%, you can set it to that. I wouldn't recommend setting it any lower than that because that's when you start getting into the dangerous territory with your LiPo, and you'll definitely shorten the lifespan of your LiPo. But you can set that appropriately, and then fuel will report 0%, but you will still actually have this amount of battery left in your pack. Now, this is the timer that I was talking about earlier with the audio alerting. So this is where you would set your flight time alarm. It's in seconds, so you'll have to calculate, if you want a 4-minute timer, you'll have to set it for 240 seconds, etc. So this is where you would set your timer value. If you don't want a timer, that's fine. You don't have to set it. It'll be defaulted to 0 anyway. But if you want the timer with the audio callouts for the timer, this is where you would set that value. So this is something new that's recently been added as well. So we've now got basically a current sensor and a voltage sensor. So if you have an ESC that has a current sensor and consumption, and basically any typical modern ESC will have this. If you've got one of those ESCs, keep it as current sensor, because you will be flying to capacity of your pack, and it'll be tracked based on current, so mark consumption of your pack. If you have a heli that has an ESC that doesn't have that, you can actually now fly to voltage. And voltage, this is something that, as I mentioned at the start of the video, that Wagner and Rob worked on. Basically what we've got now is, if you've got a heli that doesn't have basically all the latest ESC telemetry sensors and whatnot available, you can actually fly to voltage, and you will still be able to fly to 0% fuel to your consumption warning percentage, which is awesome. So for those of you who have some of the smaller helis and stuff, a lot of them don't actually have consumption sensors or current sensors on them. So you can actually come in here, pick voltage for that particular heli, and then you can adjust. So we've got two values here. There's a filter compensation and a sag compensation. The defaults are 0.5. So this is where, if you fly and you find that when you land at 0%, that you have either used nowhere near 30% or you've used more than 30% of your pack, you can adjust these values accordingly now. So if, for example, you're you're a pretty hardcore 3D flyer, I would strongly suggest making these values either 0.8 or 0.9. If you're more of a sort of intermediate or sort of sport flyer, the default values you'll find will probably be pretty accurate and will land you around that 30%. But this is where you can come and tweak the values that will then tweak how fuel is calculated when you're running on the voltage sensor, so that you can land around that consumption warning value that you've set up. So that's pretty cool. But like I said, for majority of people, you'll want to fly to your current sensor and mark consumption, and provided you've got all your battery values set correctly, it'll be extremely accurate, just depending on your ESC. But I'll show you how you can tweak things to get that really accurate as well. The other thing we've got is we do have a receiver voltage alerting, and it's per model. So if you're running a nitro heli, for example, and you've got a LiPo pack, you would come in here, you'd pick RX bat, and you can then set what value you wanted to start calling out alerts that your receiver voltage is low. So this is great for those of you that fly nitros and want to basically have a warning indicator to notify you of when your receiver pack's getting low, so you don't fly down to basically no voltage left in your receiver pack, and then you'll lose control of your heli. It will actually notify, and you can set this value appropriately. The defaults are sort of based around good values to use for a typical 2S LiPo setup. If you've got electric heli, you'd pick BEC, and then depending on what you run your BEC voltage at, you can then set this value to be, I would suggest, slightly below what your BEC voltage typically runs at. This is a good way to notify you if your BEC is struggling, or if it's perhaps on the verge of failing. You can have this, and what will happen is when you're in flight, if your BEC voltage drops below this value, it will actually tell you that your BEC voltage is low, which would be a good indication that there's probably an issue potentially with your BEC, or your servo's drawing too much current, which is impacting the BEC. So what I would suggest is run this slightly below whatever BEC voltage value you run. So for me, I typically run 8.4 on as my BEC voltage. So I usually just set mine at 8. So it will notify me if my Beck voltage drops below 8, which is, again, it's just a bit of extra safety stuff. So this is per model, so you need to make sure you set this up on each of your models. So when you connect them, come in here and set this. Same with all of this other information. It's important that you, for each of your models, that you make sure this information is accurate. That will ensure that what RFSuite dashboards report back to you and alert you to is all correct and accurate. So just to quickly touch on the different ESCs and I guess landing to whatever consumption warning percentage you set. So if you find that you're flying and you've got your consumption warning set to 30%, for example, you land and you've actually only got 20% pack left, you can then come in here and adjust your consumption correction value to ensure that it's more accurate. So for the example that I just mentioned, if you have your value set to 30% and you land and you plug it into a battery checker or your LiPo charger and there's actually only 20% left, you can then come in here and modify this value to 10%. And it will then, I mean, it may then go too far the other way, but you can then tweak it over a few flights. You'll be able to get a pretty good indication as to what you need to set this value as to ensure that when your fuel is reporting as 0%, that you've actually got that amount of fuel left that you've set in your consumption warning percentage. So this is where you can come and do that. You can also, you can do the same sort of thing via current correction. These two values are somewhat similar. And then voltage correction. So this is if you plug your pack in and it's reporting like 4.12 volts per cell, but you know it's a properly charged pack at 4.2 volts per cell, you can adjust this value up to make that more accurate. Or if it's reporting, say, 4.24 volts per cell, but it should only be saying 4.2, you can adjust this value down so that the values that you're seeing within the RFSuite dashboard themes are accurate. So this is where you can come. This is a cool feature that they've added into RotorFlight where you can account for your ESC not being totally accurate. Yeah, so I just figured I'd cover that stuff off. So now that's pretty much the main stuff to go over within RFSuite and the dashboard stuff and some of the new features and things that we've added. So now what I'll show you is, so going back to the main screen, I actually didn't, and this is a good reason why you need to make sure you click save when you go in here and change your theme, because I did change my theme earlier, but I never clicked save. Okay, I did. Well, maybe I didn't. Let's see. Okay, all right, there's my theme. Maybe it was my theme anyway. Don't mind me. So anyway, so now this is the AERC theme. As I mentioned, you saw there, I picked that. Within here, so now we have multiple options. So this is the typical layout. We now actually have support for full screen, which is really cool for those of you with smaller transmitters, but even those with the X20 or X18 RS, for example, it actually makes it look really, really clear on the screen. You can see everything and read everything easily. So you can see now, I've now switched it to full screen. You do lose the Ethos sort of navigation stuff and the Ethos native bar across the top. So we've gone and replaced those with basically a link percentage indicator, as well as your transmitter battery indicator, so that you can see that information easily when you're running in full screen mode. But I guess the benefit of this is that when you're flying and in flight, it's very easy to look down at your transmitter and see the information and read it quite quickly and quite clearly. So this is something cool that we've added. And as I mentioned, under the general options, we've actually also added a few different options for how you want your transmitter battery to appear. So if that's the default option, but you can actually come in here and you can go into settings, and under general, we have a text battery options. So you can have it as just simple text, or you can have it as a digital battery, which kind of looks like basically your mobile phone is the way we designed it. So if I put it to digital, you'll see now it kind of looks like what you'd see on your mobile phone. So you get basically a fill bar that shows you how how much battery you've got left until it's, how much transmitter battery you've got left until it's out, and you get a voltage reading from that transmitter battery. So there's multiple options there that you can choose. So this is full screen, so you can run it in either, totally up to you. But we now have support for both layouts, and all the layouts have all been customized to scale nicely to the different layout that you may be running. So if you're running full screen or the smaller sort of windowed layout. So this is your pre-flight page. So now what I'll do is I'll just show you if we arm this and we put it to in-flight, it will then change. So this is my in-flight theme. So again, everything's nice and big when you're running it full screen. You got your flight timer there. You've got how much fuel you've got left, your voltage information for your battery, head speed, throttle, ESC temp. And then once you've flown and then you motor off, it will then go to post-flight. And then on this page, again, sim, you won't see values. That's fine. On your radio, you will. But you'll get how long you flew for. This is that total model flight duration. So as I mentioned, this will keep just incrementing upwards every time you fly. Your flight count. Now, you see here it's saying flight count 0. You see here my flight duration's 21 seconds. We only log a flight once you've been flying for 25 seconds. That's just, I guess, to avoid if you say take off and have a crash early, you probably wouldn't want to consider that a flight. Maybe you do, but you can, as I said, you can adjust that value. But what we've done is we've set it to 25 seconds to avoid flights being incremented that aren't actually flights. What you would typically consider a flight is one that goes for longer than 25 seconds and then you land. So that's why this value is still showing 0. If I was to now just arm again, and this would simulate I've landed, and you can see the timer has started from where it was. This would simulate you land, maybe adjust some PID settings or tune settings or whatever, take off again. So what I'll do now is I'll simulate landing again. So now you see the flight count's gone up to 1. So yeah, just so you're aware, for a flight to be logged, it needs to be 25 seconds at least for that to happen. So yeah, then you get your post-flight screen information. So that's all pretty cool. I think as far as features and functionality of Suite, that pretty much covers it off. What I'll do now is I'll walk through some of the typical troubleshooting stuff. If you're having any issues with this, some of the things you may need to do and look into, and I'll sort of cover those off in a bit more detail to help you guys with any issues you may face. So yeah, I'll leave it at that for now. Now I'll flip over and I'll start working through some standard troubleshooting stuff. Okay, so I just wanted to cover off some of the typical issues that are faced. The main issue that we see people have is that they have issues with their telemetry sensors, whereby the values aren't appearing or fuel's not calculating correctly, and these sorts of things. So just to cover it off, first and foremost, for RFSuite and majority of the themes we've got, you do require, it does require that you have ESC telemetry set up and configured and working correctly. So what I'll do is I'll show you how you can actually use, there's a sensor tool that's added into RFSuite that you can actually use to add all of the appropriate sensors to ensure that the themes will all work as they should. If your Heli doesn't support that though, we do have some themes like the default theme, for example, that pretty much supports having no real telemetry at all, other than voltage. So you can run that theme for that model where, if it doesn't have the capabilities. So majority of most modern ESCs, Scorpion, Hobbywing, XD Fly Rotor, etc., they all would have ESC telemetry. So what you need to make sure first and foremost is that you have ESC telemetry set up. So for this example, I've got my Spectre connected in to RotorFlight configurator via USB, and I'm running an RF007 unit. For RFSuite, you can be running ELRS as well with a Nexus unit or a Fly Dragon unit or whatever. it will all still work. Your settings may just be slightly different than what I cover here. But for this example, I'm using a 007 with my Spectre Heli. So what we'll do, so firstly, you just need to make sure your telemetry port on your fly ballast unit, whichever one you has ESC telemetry set for it. You've got your cable running from the correct port on your ESC back to your fly ballast unit. And you also have your ESC configured with the appropriate telemetry communication protocol. So, because for some ESCs, you need to make sure that you've got that right. Scorpion, for example, requires unsync telemetry. YGE has its own option as well for RotorFlight. So you just got to make sure you double check and make sure that your ESC's settings are configured correctly. And then once you've done that, you need to, under the receiver tab. So as you can see here, I actually don't have any sensors added at all at the moment. What I'll show you is how you can actually use RFSuite to add those. So you don't need to worry about what you need to pick, and you don't need to just enable everything and that sort of stuff. You can absolutely go through and pick what you want to have, but you can also, as I'll show you, use RFSuite to do that. Now there is another option. You need to make sure under your motors tab that you've got your ESC telemetry protocol set to your appropriate ESC. So you can see there's a bunch of options here. In this example, in my Heli, I'm running an XD Fly ESC. These settings also, one-wire communication, RxTX, pin swap, etc. They're specific to your ESC. I won't cover that here. That's all already covered in RotorFlight documentation, and also if you need help for that, the Facebook group or Discord, someone will be able to help you to get the correct settings if you're having issues with your ESC telemetry. You'll also see here, this is where, for my example, for this Heli, I actually have adjusted the consumption correction, as I was talking about when I was walking through the fuel stuff, to get that value to be nice and accurate. For your ESC, that may just be able to be 0 and it'll be fine, or you may need to adjust it differently. It all just depends. So once you've got your ESC telemetry working, if we go on to, what I'll do is I will bring up my transmitter so that I can show you, because I have actually got my my transmitter connected to my Heli. So just bringing this up. Again, apologies for the video quality. So what you can do on your transmitter, and you can see there, sorry, how there's nothing, no values coming through for anything. That's because telemetry's, the sensors aren't set up. So we can actually fix that by just going under System and then going into RotorFlight, which is the RFSuite admin module. And then within here, once it comes up under hardware, we have a sensors option here. If you click on this, and you'll see here, there's some that are okay and there's a bunch that are invalid. So what we can actually do now is add these. So to do that, up the top, you'll see here, basically there's the star button. You'll click on that and then you just click on OK. And what this will now do is it will actually update and add all of your telemetry sensors into the configurator. So once this is done, which it's just about done now, and it does say to basically go and discover telemetry sensors on your radio. So I'll show you how to do that. So once you've done that, if we just quit back out, you bring up your, quit out of that, we bring up your model menu and then scroll across to telemetry.
Disarmed bank 3.
And you see now that it's got telemetry, so it's calling out things. You'll want to come in here. I didn't need to do it, but it's a good idea to do this, is to turn on discover new sensors. And then when you do that, it will add a bunch of new sensors. So you can see smart consumption, for example, this is a sensor that we're adding. Smart fuel, it's got nothing at the moment. That's because I actually don't have a battery connected to this Heli. It's just connected via USB. So you see now it's actually added all of the required telemetry sensors for RotorFlight, and then if I, for RFSuite I should say, and then if I now get rid of my transmitter from the screen, and in the configurator, if I now go to the receiver page, You'll see, remember before, like I had nothing selected, so now it's actually gone and enabled all of the required sensors, which is really cool. There are some that you may want to add in addition to that. For example, if you like to have a telemetry sensor for your tail speed, you can enable that. I actually turn on altitude as well myself, but again, that's a personal preference thing. So I can just save that, and that will now, and then because I'm in Discover mode on my radio, I think that's actually already been added. I can flick that back onto my radio to show you, but yeah, so if I scroll down, I would imagine it'd be down the bottom once I get there. Altitude, so it's added altitude again. So as I was mentioning earlier, you see I've just left the default as meters, so make sure you don't modify that. You use the localization within Suite to do that. Similarly with your ESC temp, same thing as I mentioned in the video, don't touch the defaults. So basically now I have got all the sensors on my radio, and then if I quit out, aside from fuel not showing or ESC temp showing, because as I mentioned, I've not actually got a battery plugged in, but you can see it's actually pulled up my rates profile. It's got my number of flights and my black box log, which you can't see because of the Frsky logo, but yeah, you can see it's 0 because I actually cleared it before. Another cool thing, you can actually erase your black box storage directly from Suite. So if you click on it, it comes up erase data flash. You can click OK, and it'll do that. I won't do it because it's already erased, but that's another cool little feature there that you can use. So yeah, I guess the main thing is that in order for everything to function correctly, you need to make sure your ESC telemetry is set up correctly. And as far as sensors are concerned, to simplify it, you can simply use that sensor tool in RFSuite to add it, which is pretty cool. All right, guys, so I just wanted to quickly touch on model images. This has been something that has caused some issues for people in the past. So if you want to have this RotorFlight logo replaced by an image of your model that you have, what you need to do firstly is have your image files converted to either .png or .bmp format. There is a tool available in Ethos Suite from Frsky that you can use to select your images and convert them to an appropriate format, which will be .bmp, and it will also scale the resolution down to a suitable resolution that will display correctly within the RFSuite dashboards that we've got. So once you've converted your images, you then need to connect your radio into your computer, and you need to copy your image files that you've converted into the bitmaps models folder on your flash drive on your radio. You can see here I've actually already got a bunch of models here, but you can see they're actually not appearing on the screen. So it's important to note that if you want these images to, so for example, if you run a single model on your radio and you want an image to appear that's relevant for the model that you've got connected, what you need to do is you need to name the files the same name as your craft name in RotorFlight. So for this example, the craft name in the Sim's Pilot. So what I'm going to do is I'll rename this Spectre image to Pilot. And what will happen is that will actually then start working on the radio. So you can see now I can see the image. So it happened immediately. Obviously, in your case, it wouldn't be because you'd have your transmitter connected to your machine. But for the simulator, you can see. So now it's recognized that this the craft name I'm using matches the image file name. So it's loaded. That's one way to do it. There is also another way. So if you wanted to, for example, you wanted your file was called, as it was before, Spectre, and you only run a single model on your radio for each of your models. So you have multiple models on your radio. You don't use the single model setup. There is another way to get the images to appear within the dashboard themes without needing to have the image file named the same as your craft name. You can come in here and under model and edit model where you've got the picture where you can select your model image. You'll see here this will be the same as my SD or flash drive on the radio. So Spectre test XLP. This will then match these files within within the radio. So what I'll do is for this one, I'll pick XLP. So you can actually easily just specify your model file in here, your image file in here. And then if we just go back, that will now be my image file. So again, multiple ways to do it depending on your setup. Either way will work. The suggested way would be to just have the image file named exactly the same as your craft name in RotorFlight, and it will all just work. And again, you just need to make sure you use the RFSuite tool to convert that file to an appropriate format and size, and yeah, then your image files will load as expected. Okay, so the last thing I want to cover off in this video is how you can raise any issues that you're having with the new version, or the pre-release version of RFSuite. Rob and myself, we often get a lot of direct messages via Facebook, Discord, etc. Whilst we're happy to help that way, for us it's better if you guys actually just go ahead and raise an issue on GitHub. For us, that just gives us the ability that either myself or Rob can help you guys, and it also just gives us a way to track any ongoing issues with RFSuite. So I'll quickly walk you through how to do that, because it is quite simple. So what you want to do is, when you go to the RotorFlight RFSuite GitHub page, again, that link will be in the description, because it's the same way you would have accessed the version to download. What you will want to do is you'll click on issues at the top. And then what you want to do is you may need to set up an account if you don't have one. It doesn't take much to quickly set one up. And then what you want to do is come in here and just raise a new issue. Now, when you raise the issue, obviously title it whatever the particular issue is, a quick summary. And then in the description, if you can just put down some specific details as to what the issue is, what you did to trigger the issue, and sort of any other information that would be helpful for us to work through and work out what's going on and ultimately get that fixed. So yeah, we please ask that instead of messaging us directly, if you do have any issues, please raise an issue on GitHub for the problem you're facing with as much detail as possible, and then that way it helps us to collectively work together to help resolve it. So yeah, that'll pretty much be it for this video. As I mentioned, it is a long video, and it was a long video. I will timestamp it so that you can skip through, but in summary, please make sure that if you do have any issues, raise an issue on GitHub so that we can help to sort it out and get it fixed up. Otherwise, thanks guys, and cheers.